Collective Audience provides performance, advertising, and digital media solutions. The company, through its platform, offers an audience-based advertising solution to identify, convert, and monetize brands and publishers. A Collective Audience serves clients in the United States, and with me is Peter Bordas, the CEO, and Joe Zawadzki, the chairman. Great to have you guys here. So let's just start. Peter, explain what you're building at Collective Audience.
Sure. Well, we're building and innovating and disrupting at the same time on several fronts. First and foremost within the industry, technologically, driving the next generation of what we think of as digital media and advertising, a 3.0 ecosystem. And then also on the cultural and the business side, where we're building everything around the principles of collective intelligence and the understanding that we're stronger as a group than we are as individuals, both as individuals, parts of the organization, technologically, even as part of what we call our shareholder and our advisor collective, that are all a part of this journey and harnessing that kind of the power of that collective together.
Yeah. What is the problem and the size of the problem that is facing the advertising industry right now?
Where does one begin?
I've worked in television for so many years, and it just feels like it's so kind of, cloudy right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're looking at the potential of hitting a $1 trillion industry by 2030, but in order to get there, there are many challenges that we're facing that are kind of legacy issues that we've inherited from, the evolution of the industry that really have to get solved in order to unlock, all that value on many different fronts. But, just as a kind of primer to how we got here, as we first started, it's kind of akin to the Big Bang Theory and what phase one was. And we're, digital media and advertising industry. I came out of traditional media. We watched things just hyper fragment, become hyper fragmented. But then phase two started to happen, which, Seth Godin, who's one of the most brilliant marketing minds, said, like the Big Bang Theory, if we didn't start to have gravity creating some semblance of organization in that chaos, the whole thing implodes on itself. But that then was the beginning of the formation of today's silos and walled gardens, such as Google and Facebook, compounded with many other issues that the industry faces, in that there's significant margin compression. When you spend $1 between the brand and the advertiser, by the down to the publisher, by the time it gets there, the publisher's only getting 10% of it, because there's so many hops of these different applications between buyer and seller that it's become highly fragmented, full of friction, and it's not sustainable. And that's really one of the big challenges that we're here to face in the model that we built. And essentially, when you think about the 3.0, which is the ecosystem model, where everything is connected, you don't have that margin compression because you're connecting it together. It's akin to if you remove the walled gardens of Google today, what would unfold? It would be an open, interconnected ecosystem of supply, demand, data, media, and all the various different assets. And that's what we've set out to build.
It's been fascinating to watch develop over the last 20 years or so. Joe, what's your perspective on all this?
Yeah, probably no surprise. Sort of see the kind of root issues and opportunities similarly, right? So right now, if you just think about it, everybody's a marketer, right? Every company in the world kind of relies on digital advertising to reach consumers, to differentiate their brand, et cetera. And then increasingly, a lot of companies are becoming media companies in their own right. There's a massive proliferation in this concept called retail media, and you're seeing other verticals begin to do the same thing. And so the $1 trillion is not it's not sort of an overstatement, just given how sort of fundamentally important digital marketing is to the global economy. Peter's point is right, and the sort of challenge is the opportunity is huge, and it's very hard for any single company to solve for the demands of the market, especially given how quickly it's changing, right? Increasing regulation on a global basis, some fundamental protocols of how advertising works are changing. You'll hear about the cookie apocalypse, right? So the way a lot of this actually works from a technical perspective is changing. And so what we saw was an opportunity to kind of rethink on two fronts, right? One is, how do you solve some of these bigger problems and how do you do it where you've upended some of the corporate bias to build, right? So you often hear the not built here bias. And it's like, okay, well, really big problem, can't build everything you need. And so if you orient it instead around strong partnerships, right? The ability to truly build, buy, and partner with equal fluency, these bigger solutions. And you could recruit companies to not focus as much on competition, but focus on the collaboration that's necessary in order to solve some of these bigger opportunities. You would do something kind of new, at least new to the digital advertising market in the US. I think there are other industries that do find the kind of Kuretsu model successful and be able to pursue sort of joint interests in that way, but that's effectively what we're building here.
Yeah. And why do you think it's a good time for companies and brands to look at advertising in media and digital?
Well, I mean, the world is changing so quickly, and the Orwellian world is here, which has been accelerated by the pandemic. While the pandemic was horrible for humanity, it stepped on the Orwellian world with 2 feet on the gas pedal, global, interconnected data and AI to be able to use the data. And what's happened now is to think of it as like power to the people. All of a sudden, the brands and the media companies that are responsible for actually they create all the data, and that data now becoming in a completely new asset class that I think is akin to what gold was the gold rush or oil was to the industrial age, is now there. The problem is they don't know what to do with it.
With all the data.
They don't know what to do with it. I mean, it's amazing. When I sit on the board of a big media company, like, yes, power to the people. Like, now what?
Now what do we do?
Well, there are too many solutions. You've got, what do I do with my data? A CDP, a DMP, a this thing, a that thing. They need a solution that brings these building blocks together that can be customized to what their needs are and helping them kind of realize the value of that new asset class for them. It's really, really important.
Would AI help with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so data as an asset class is incredible because we now have the real-time infrastructure to be able to manage the liquidity and creating that efficient liquidity. The problem is that you have such massive, massive amounts of data. You need to have the AI to be able to go through it, to understand it really and extract the value that then can be used in whatever way you want to use it, whether it's connecting audiences, monetizing audiences, understanding audiences so I can go find more just like them. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
And completely different.
I may just say I'm like looking around right now in the middle of Times Square, and there are screens everywhere.
Yeah.
And on my ride here, I, of course, was staring at a phone, and you range from small screens in your hands to the spectacular, the 7-story tower that sits outside of NASDAQ, right? And it like we as people are just connected all of the time, right? And so to digital devices, to screens, to podcasts in our ears, et cetera, and wrangling all of that as a marketer, and again, go back to the premise that everybody ultimately is, whether it's a small brand that's launching a direct-to-consumer product for the first time, to the Procter & Gamble's and the IBM's of the world, right? All of them need to kind of manage this massive proliferation of sort of digital screens and speakers all over the place. And how do you do it? And the idea that you do need these sort of interconnected groups of companies to work together in order to actually power those advertising experiences in ways that kind of work for human beings is kind of a acknowledged sort of obvious need. The how we do it is, I think, where both the art and the science come into it. And your point's right. You start introducing AI. It's been something that's been part of digital advertising, kind of below the waterline for 20 years, right? And if you were handling trillions and trillions of impressions, being able, doing that by hand is literally impossible for people. But I think what you're seeing now with some of the, the ChatGPT, some of the kind of consumer adoption of AI, is you'll start seeing it penetrate a lot more of how advertising works, how organizations work, how an agency does its job, how brands make their assets available from a creative perspective. So you'll see, I think, a second wave of sort of AI adoption now that it's something that we're all thinking and talking about. It's kind of given us all collectively, pun intended perhaps, some license to push changes in our own organizations with it. Yeah.
Now, how will collective audience adapt and take advantage of this fragmentation in the advertising marketplace? Either one of you can weigh in on that.
I'll start a second.
I was thinking about this. It's the Little Prince, right? You can either assemble all the wood and direct people to build the boat, or you can, get them to yearn of the vast and endless sea. And forgive me for the drama there, but I think it's pretty simple. I think creating these opportunities where it's very clear that the Fortune 2000 marketer, for example, to talk about one audience, is looking to fundamentally change, to upgrade, to scale how they leverage advertising, right? How they do it in the right way, how they do it across all their brands, how they do it consistently on a global basis, et cetera. And then we say, okay, there's a big opportunity here. Now, how do we do it, right? And the idea that we are able through partnership and through investment, acquisition, et cetera, to basically recruit the people that can help solve these problems, the sort of next generation category leaders, in order to pursue those kind of larger opportunities that many of them wouldn't be able to go after by themselves, is effectively the collective audience, right? Big ideas, create the conditions where multiple companies can work together in collaboration in order to solve those problems, and build something pretty durable as a result.
Yeah. Who would be some of those companies that you might look? You don't have to mention names, but in what kind of industries would be merger partners, acquisition targets?
There are so many. I mean, there. First of all, to add to what Joe was saying, there's so many macroeconomic things that are happening, not just in the industry shift, but in general for operators. I mean, there's no access to capital. There's no liquidity. Yeah. They've built a great application, but it's very tough to operate and scale as a standalone from a resources perspective. And the idea of being a part of something greater as a component to it is extremely attractive to them. And going at that question, along with the previous question that you asked, is very relevant to the collective model and the whole idea of collective intelligence, in that we'd say, oh, you guys are doing a roll-up. We are absolutely not doing a roll-up. And we think of everything like Legos and building blocks. And through that, and connecting everything together, people, places, things, and technology in this ecosystem, we create a rising tide business model that's absolutely fascinating, and being extremely disciplined in how we're executing against that, and that every building block that we attach or bring in, whether it's something that we're building organically through these type of joint ventures where there's also equity participation, or through accretive tuck-in acquisitions, if you plug that component in and it doesn't get exponential growth and create exponential growth as a multiplier across everything else, then we absolutely won't touch it. And so the applications range from virtually almost anything as it relates to data, AI, all the different forms of marketing, email, display, programmatic, all these kind of components that we want to assemble in this ecosystem to create a single point of entry for both the brands and the media companies to be able to participate in this ecosystem.
And Joe, you've got a history of tech innovation and innovation and venture capital. And what was it about Collective Audience that brought you on board and other veterans of the industry?
Yeah, I believe strongly in Peter's vision. I mean, the idea that you could start with the benefit of 2.5 decades of insight into how the market has evolved, and then to have the kind of ambition to say, look, there's an entity here that you won't be trying to fit some of these principles onto, right? This idea of sort of collaboration first, it's not competition first, it's okay, there's a big opportunity, how do we work together to go solve for it? And then to have the flexibility in the tools in which to do that, right? Where again, you can build, you can buy, you can partner, you can JV, you can invest from a kind of a sort of an architectural opportunity. It's kind of amazing, right? It basically means you get to paint the picture and then again recruit people to join that. that. And I think it's harder for other organizations to sort of adapt that model, right? So a lot of companies that are sort of focused on the competition, focused on the build it all in-house, it's just harder to make the sort of the DNA shift in that way. And so when you find these kind of like-minded companies and like-minded sort of entrepreneurs and operators, and basically say, like, there's a different way to do this, and there's an organization that's prepared to lead with that ethos, it becomes really attractive. It's like, oh, you can't do that in other places, or you're generally you're railing against an organization sort of designed in some other way. And so it's been fairly straightforward. I mean, the idea of identifying those key kind of next gen leaders in their current businesses and getting them to join the collective advisory group, for example, is finding other companies that represent kind of the best in class of their particular categories, to that point of, all right, you need media access, great. We need planning tools, we need attribution and measurement, we need dynamic creative. I won't go through the whole list, but this building block, this kind of Lego assembly of components, holds. And you just identify the best companies, you identify the people that are eager to work in this way, and you basically give them the space to do it. And that's it's exciting.
Can you provide any examples of like how you've helped these companies?
So many.
A couple weeks, we can have better ones.
Yeah, I've got many. There's so many examples of that. I think of the conversations that we're having right now, and I want to actually go back to something that in your question that was really important. A lot of it is about not only the technology, but it's about the who. And a lot of the companies, again, and the founders and the operators who, I need to get liquidity for my investors. They've been in here for 10 to 8 years. I'm not done yet. I'm talking to private equity and the kind of more traditional routes. But, to Joe's point, I kind of want to stay in control. I'm not done yet. How does that work as a part of the collective? And we're innovating throughout the entire stack of the company, not only technologically as an ecosystem, but as an enterprise as well, in that, there isn't, that we're not reporting up, we're all reporting into each other, and each member that's joining is the expert in their area, the area that they're bringing in, or that building block, and we report into each other. No one's really built a company like this with that kind of a super flat-lined structure, but it really is enabling everybody to not get burrowed or drowned in the past experiences we've all had as operators, becoming another part of an organization, and we're just waiting for the next 2 years to get out of our earnouts. We don't want that. We want everybody to provide an environment where everybody can thrive and drive the economic value and enterprise value for them, their shareholders, and our shareholders.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. Investors, shareholders. I mean, how are you dealing with this business model to be able to maximize that value as much as possible?
We're both believers in having in our collective experiences as both entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, we like having as many legs underneath the stool as humanly possible. So diversity is key, both diversity in revenue and revenue models of, SaaS, enterprise, rev shares, data management services, as well as on the equity value side, whether through full acquisition of companies or these joint ventures where we're taking pieces of the company, giving them access to some liquidity, but then because of the multiplier effect in revenues that they're plugging in, we all want to benefit from the exponential growth in revenue. So their equity goes up, we and our shareholders win. Our equity goes up, their shareholders win. And that's a really, really important component of what we're developing that, outside of some companies doing pieces of it, we haven't seen any company innovating in this way. So, imagine, the model, if I was going to distill it down to something that's kind of like Google as an operating company meets Berkshire Hathaway meets SoftBank. And that's really what the collective model is all about and how we're building shareholder value.
Humble ambition.
Yeah.
Just a little thing.
But it kind of, but it makes sense. It makes sense when you
Go big
explain
or
it
go
that
home,
way.
right?
So, no, absolutely. You got to dream big. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Peter, Joe, for coming and
Thank you.
explaining this. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thanks.